My husband is upright and virtuous, a gentleman renowned throughout the court and the realm. He has no concubines or mistresses, and everyone believes he loves and cherishes me. Only I know that he loves the empress. I had long since accepted my fate. Until that year, when rebel forces stormed the city, kidnapped our only daughter, and demanded he hand over the empress and the crown prince. On the battlefield, he shot our daughter with an arrow and said, "Since ancient times, one cannot serve both family and country." I went gray overnight and, in despair, chose to die with the empress. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the night of our wedding. Facing his expressionless face, I smiled gently. "Since you loved each other so much, let your love story be sung throughout the land." Chapter 1. In my previous life, news of Qi Huang's rebellion and his invasion of the imperial city reached me. I immediately dismissed my servants and fled with my daughter. My daughter was confused and asked, "Why don't we wait for father to return?" I smiled bitterly, hugging her tightly. "Your father will not return. He had someone else he wanted to protect more." Sure enough, not long after, the emperor was killed by Qi Huang. Shinsu protected the empress and the crown prince as they fled the city. From start to finish, he never once thought of his wife and young daughter still left behind. Fortunately, I had long since given up hope on him. As his reputation for loyalty and righteousness spread across the land, my daughter and I lived among the refugees, struggling to survive each day. But as I held my daughter in my arms, hope never once faded from my heart. I thought that if we managed to escape this time, I would live my life well. I would cast aside all the past. I would no longer have to bear such a heavy and disgusting secret, living in constant fear. But heaven does not always grant one's wishes, and we eventually fell into the hands of the rebels. Shinsu supported the crown prince as emperor, leading the loyalist forces to confront the rebels, forcing the Qi king into retreat. The Qi king somehow recalled the rumor that Shinsu cherished his wife and daughter. He offered a hefty reward and eventually captured us. On the city walls, the desperate Qi king placed a knife to his daughter's throat, demanding Shinsu hand over the empress and the crown prince. Though I knew it was futile, I still cried out in agony, begging Shinsu. I pleaded with him to spare our only daughter, considering our 11 years of childhood friendship. But he drew his bow without hesitation and shot an arrow that pierced his daughter's heart. Since ancient times, one cannot serve both family and country. His words rang out clearly on the battlefield. The battle was won. He saved the empress, protected the crown prince, and saved the kingdom from collapse. Becoming a hero of the state, he used his daughter's blood to pave the way for his own immortal fame, fulfilling the dreams of those he loved. I went gray overnight, my heart as cold as ashes. The king of Qi did not kill me. Before fleeing, he ordered someone to send me back to Shinsu. I knew why he spared my life. He wanted me to be the blade of his revenge. I had no reason to refuse. In Shinsu's camp, I saw the empress whose fame had spread across the land. She leaned against Shinsu's chest, no longer bothering to hide their relationship from me. "Your daughter was able to sacrifice her life for the country. That is a great blessing. You must not harbor any resentment or blame Shinqing. After all, with your lowly origins, you were able to accompany Shinqing every day. You should cherish this blessing." Meng Han looked down on me from above, her gaze filled with almost uncontrollable disgust and hatred. At this moment, she was the most noble woman in the entire empire, and I was nothing more than an ant being toyed with at her whim. What did she hate me for? The answer was obvious. I laughed softly. The empress must be very jealous of me, right? I am but a lowly woman, yet I can stand by Shinsu's side with pride as his wife. Yet you, the empress, can only meet him in secret like a rat hiding in the dark. Before I could finish, Meng Han erupted in anger as I had expected. She stepped forward and slapped me across the face. "You slut! How dare you!" My face turned to the side, half of it burning with pain, and a metallic taste rose in my throat. She was still not satisfied, and her long nails scratched my face. "What are you? How dare you speak to me like that? You are only alive because of my mercy and generosity. I had originally planned to let you return to the Shin mansion to continue being a decoration. But since you are so ungrateful, you will go to the compassionate nunnery with the bastard you bore." I did not give her the chance to finish her sentence. The golden hairpin hidden in my sleeve pierced her throat. Blood sprayed all over my face. The once beautiful face, now twisted in agony, was ugly and grotesque. Her mouth wide open, eyes bulging, like a dead fish. Before I could pull out the hairpin and stab Shinsu, I was kicked away by a powerful force. I coughed up a mouthful of blood. In the sea of red, I only saw Meng Han lying in Shinsu's arms. That face, which had been calm for years, was now filled with shock, pain, regret, and anger. It was breathtakingly beautiful. He glared at me with red eyes and cursed. "You poisonous woman! I'll make sure you suffer for eternity." Unfortunately, he had no chance. Before entering the room, I had already taken poison. Now the poison had entered my lungs, every thread of it causing unbearable pain. In my daze, I saw that little pink bundle waving at me, just like countless times before. She comforted me like a little adult. "Mother, don't be afraid. Chow Chow will always be with you." My daughter. Her name was Shin Chow Chow. From the day she was born, she had never been held by her father once. She was very obedient and well-behaved. She would always ask me why her father didn't love her. She even thought that her father didn't love her because he didn't love me. To gain her father's love, she learned to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. The little girl studied diligently every day without rest. She believed that by mastering these skills and becoming the most renowned lady in the capital, her father would no longer despise her. But even when her fingertips bled, the blood crusted over, and the crusts fell off to form layer upon layer of calluses, she still did not earn a single glance from her father. On that day on the city walls, my Chow Chow faced the arrows her father had shot at her. Yet she only looked at me. She said to me, "Mother, don't cry. Chow Chow isn't afraid." She was only 6 years old. In her final moments, she was still trying to comfort her useless mother. I gathered my last ounce of strength and reached out to her. "Good child. Mother will come to you." I was reborn. Reborn on the night of my wedding to Shinsu. Just like in my previous life. The veil was lifted, revealing Shinsu's face, cold and indifferent to the extreme. He spoke without hesitation, saying he was tired and wanted to rest. I couldn't tell if it was reality or a dream, but the face before me was too despicable, and I didn't hesitate to slap him across the face. The force was so great that my hand went numb with pain. On Shinsu's previously flawless face, 5 clear fingerprints appeared. It wasn't a dream. I felt a surge of joy and raised my hand again, slapping him once more. Shinsu was taken aback. He grabbed my hand, his eyes growing cold. "What are you doing?" I smiled coldly. "Nothing. Just itching to hit you." Shinsu was stunned, rarely showing such a bewildered expression. I pressed on, speaking nonsense. "Didn't my father tell you I have a condition where I can't go a day without hitting someone? Or else my hands itch unbearably? Since you agreed to my father's terms and promised to take care of me for the rest of your life, you should accept being hit by me willingly." Shinsu was furious. "What nonsense are you spouting? We've known each other for so long. How could you not know about this condition?" I rolled my eyes. "Humph. That's a funny thing to say. If I were to tell you, how could you possibly marry me willingly?" But you don't have to feel so wronged. My father raised you all these years. Now you can just consider it paying him back. Besides, you're tough. A few hits won't hurt. He flew into a rage. Don't you fear I'll divorce you. I sipped my wedding wine casually. Go ahead and divorce me. You rejected the marriage proposal from the minister of the Imperial Secretariat's family to marry me. Everyone knows I'm the daughter of your former mentor. If you divorce me, what will become of your reputation? He glared at me hatefully. Then, after a long pause, managed to utter a single "you." I remained calm, thinking to myself, you're only hurting yourself. Shinsu married me because he was attracted to my humble background. My father was the head of the Imperial Academy. I was his only daughter. Shinsu was a distant cousin from my mother's side. His biological mother had an affair with another man, who poisoned his father. The clan seized his family's property and drove him out of the village. 1 year, my father accompanied my mother back to our hometown. Seeing his plight, he took him in to study. At first, my father considered taking him as a son-in-law. However, Shinsu showed exceptional talent in his studies. According to the laws of our dynasty, although son-in-laws were not barred from taking the imperial examinations, they were not allowed to hold official positions in the court. My father feared this would hinder his future prospects, so he abandoned the idea. He dedicated himself solely to supporting Shinsu's education, hoping to cultivate a virtuous connection, and wishing that Shinsu would one day repay our kindness. I grew up with Shinsu, playing together since childhood. Shinsu was handsome and talented, and I had always harbored feelings for him. However, my father told me to abandon this notion. He said Shinsu was no ordinary man and would one day achieve great things. As for me, with my ordinary abilities, marrying Shinsu would not be a suitable match. He only wished for me to marry into a wealthy family, find a kind-hearted husband, and live a peaceful life. Though my heart ached, my father was already gravely ill at the time, and I could not bear to disobey his wishes. I forced myself to let go of my feelings and began to see Shinsu as an older brother. Later, Shinsu indeed passed the imperial examinations with top honors, becoming the youngest third-place scholar of the dynasty. He suddenly became highly sought after. Even the family of the minister of the Imperial Secretariat sent envoys to propose marriage. My father asked him about his intentions. He replied that he was deeply in love with me. He pleaded with my father to marry me to him. I was overjoyed and devoted myself entirely to becoming his virtuous wife. But I never imagined that the man I had loved so deeply had always seen me as nothing more than a pawn to hide his feelings for the empress. I came from a humble background. My parents were dead, and I had no brothers. I was an easy target for him to manipulate. I married him when I was only 16 years old. On our wedding night, he did not consummate the marriage, claiming that I was too young and he did not want me to suffer. I believed he cherished me and devoted my entire heart to him. I managed the household affairs, keeping everything in order. In the eyes of others, we appeared to be a loving couple. For the first 2 years of our marriage, he remained chaste. When colleagues invited him to drink with them, he always refused, saying he had a fierce wife at home. This became a topic of admiration among them. Even though he was always cold toward me at home, I never doubted his feelings for me. I thought he was just a reserved person. But even when I turned 18, he still showed no intention of consummating our marriage. As an unmarried woman whose mother had died young and whose father was already deceased, I didn't even know whom to ask about such matters. Later, I mustered the courage to learn the ways of courtesans, set a banquet table, invited him to drink, and during the meal, I half undressed and sat in his lap. He suddenly pushed me away and asked where I had learned such vulgar tricks. He found it disgusting. I will never forget the look in his eyes at that moment. 3 parts contempt, 3 parts hatred, and 12 parts arrogance. as if I were some lowly, filthy thing in his eyes. I was both ashamed and angry, not knowing what to do as he swept away. For a long time, he didn't speak to me, even though we lived under the same roof. He treated me as if I didn't exist. He wouldn't even look at me, as if I were something that would defile his eyes. At that time, I was too young to understand that this was his way of disciplining me. He shattered my pride and trampled on my self-respect. He turned me into a pitiful creature in the inner quarters, only capable of self-pity and following his every command. At that time, I didn't know what to do. I dared only hide under the covers and cry secretly every day. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but feel angry, and I slapped Shinsu again. He grabbed my hand and warned me not to push my luck. Do you really think I dare not hit you? I stroked his face and laughed. Go ahead and hit me. If you hit me today, I will spread it all over the world tomorrow, saying that the third-place scholar is abusing his wife, who is also the daughter of his benefactor. I wonder if the emperor will like this rumor. Shinsu's eyes blazed with anger. But he dared not lay a finger on me. I knew he wouldn't dare to hit me. At this moment, he was solely focused on climbing the ranks for his empress. His reputation couldn't afford even the slightest blemish. It was hard for him to lower his head. Yet he pretended to be deeply affectionate, gently rubbing my cheek. Ku Jin, do you have some misunderstanding about me? Or have you been swayed by slanderous words? We've been together since childhood. You should know that my heart belongs entirely to you. I come from a humble background. It hasn't been easy to get where I am today. We are husband and wife, sharing both honor and disgrace. I'm dedicated to my career for your sake. As my wife, you should manage the household so I can focus on my career without any worries. Shinshushin had a pair of eyes that seemed to hold endless affection. When he looked at her intently, it was hard not to feel as though she was the only person in his world. If I were still the Sukujin of my previous life, I would have been willing to go through fire and water for him after hearing those words. Alas, that Sukujin is dead. The one standing before him now was a vengeful spirit who wanted nothing more than to grind his bones to dust. And he was only trying to calm me down because he couldn't divorce me and needed me as a puppet. I stroked his face and slapped him across the face. What a shame that you, born of an adulterous mother, are such a lowly creature. How dare you think you deserve my love? Shinsu glared at me, wanting to devour me whole. But in the end, he clenched his teeth and left. I sat on the red wedding quilt, staring at his back, my mind filled with ways to kill him and Meng Han. Since they loved each other so deeply, wouldn't it be a shame not to let their love be sung throughout the land? The next morning, I got up early and cooked a pot of hot porridge. I set the breakfast in the main hall and invited Shinsu to eat. Shinsu looked at me suspiciously, probably wondering why I had hated him so much last night but was now being so attentive to him. I rolled my eyes, eat it or not. If you don't eat today, you won't get another meal from me. Shinsu eventually sat down and began to eat the porridge. Then, he was knocked unconscious by the sleeping potion I had slipped into his food. I spat in his face. Such a scoundrel, daring to eat this old woman's food? Go to the underworld and eat there. After that, I rushed to break open the door to his study. After a thorough search, I finally found the small portrait of Meng Han hidden in a secret compartment on the wall. The inscription in the lower left corner read, "Beloved Huan Huan." It was clearly Shinsu's handwriting. After 2 lifetimes, I saw this portrait again. I still felt sick to my stomach. The events of my previous life flashed through my mind like a slideshow. After Shinsu rejected me that day, I fell into a deep depression for a long time. But I'm not the kind of woman who can't let go. Regardless of the reason he treated me this way, this was not the kind of marital relationship I desired. Even though my heart was being torn apart, I still proposed that if he did not love me, we could divorce. He looked at me for a moment, tucked my hair behind my ear, and asked, "Why would you think that? Of course I love you. I haven't consummated our marriage because I follow the teachings of Huang Lao and abstain from such matters. But if you desire it, I am willing to satisfy you." That day, we consummated our marriage. Throughout the entire process, I felt nothing but pain. He remained cold and distant on the bed. Afterward, he said he had work to attend to and left in a hurry. Under the cold moonlight, I watched him walk away swiftly. My heart felt barren. He remained indifferent in that matter. He only had relations with me on fixed days each month. Soon, I became pregnant. After that, I gave birth to a child. He never touched me again. To outsiders, we appeared to be a model couple. But in reality, at home, we were like two parallel lines that never intersected. Just as my father had foretold, he rose higher and higher in his official career. We moved to a new home. After the house grew larger, we often went weeks without seeing each other. By this point, I had already sensed something was amiss. But with a child to raise, I thought most women in the world must endure such hardships. I treated him merely as the child's father. Life was bearable enough. The only thing I resented him for was his indifference toward Chow Chow. When Chow Chow first learned to walk, she saw Shinsu in the mansion and wobbled toward him, wanting him to pick her up. She fell halfway and burst into tears. Shinsu merely frowned and watched from the side, refusing to pick her up. That day, I had a fierce argument with Shinsu. He asked me what else I was dissatisfied with. "You wanted protection, so I married you and gave you protection. You wanted a child, so I gave you one. You wanted honor, so I earned it for you. You went from being the daughter of a scholar at the Imperial Academy to a third-rank noblewoman. Now, everyone looks up to you. One should be content with what one has." At that moment, I felt like someone had poured a bucket of cold water over my head on a freezing winter day, leaving me shivering from head to toe. I had always believed that even if Shinsu didn't love me, he at least respected me. But it turned out that everything he had given me was nothing but charity. I didn't want that kind of charity, so I demanded a divorce again. But outside his study, I discovered him masturbating in front of a portrait. At that moment, I couldn't tell if I felt more disgust or anger. I kicked open the door, snatched the painting from his hands, and tried to confront him. But to my shock, the person in the painting was none other than Empress Menghan, holding the small portrait. I felt the world spinning. Many of the confusing things from the past finally made sense. Why did Shinsu marry me? Why did he marry me and then never touch me? And why did the Empress always torment me whenever she saw me? As Shinsu's wife, I had to see the Empress during festivals and court ceremonies. I still remember the first time I met her. Because I failed to catch the gift a palace maid handed me, I dropped and broke a jade scepter. The Empress ordered me to kneel in front of the Phoenix Clear Hall for 3 hours. It was only after Shinsu pleaded for mercy that I was released. That day, on the carriage back to the mansion, my legs were swollen like dough, and I was in pain and filled with sorrow. Shinsu merely said that the Empress had a bad temper but a pure heart, and I must not harbor any resentment toward her. The Empress has a fiery temper, loves indulgence, and is the subject of much criticism throughout the court. Shinsu actually believes the Empress has a pure heart. I looked up in disbelief and saw Shinsu's lips curled slightly, looking in a good mood. But that smile vanished in an instant, making me doubt whether it was just an illusion. Now, I finally understand that it wasn't an illusion. Shinsu was truly happy because the Empress had punished me. Because the Empress had punished me, it meant she was jealous of him. What had I done to deserve this? How had I become the tool they used to convey their feelings? I was filled with horror and demanded to know if he realized that if anyone found out, it would bring ruin upon our entire family. He merely gave me a cold glance, since you know. Keep your mouth shut. I proposed a divorce, insisting I must leave this madman. He replied, divorce is acceptable, but you may leave only if Chow Chow stays behind. Under the moonlight, his face, as fair as jade, looked like that of a demon devouring a soul. I finally understood why Shinsu had made me give birth to a child. He needed a hostage. With the child, I had become his hostage. Even knowing his sordid, dark secrets, I could only pretend nothing was wrong and help him hide them. Thinking back to my previous life, he and Meng Han never treated me as a human being. They were gods high above, while I was nothing but a lowly ant. Even being chosen to play the role of a love story with them was a blessing in 3 lifetimes. In truth, I had already accepted my fate. As long as Chow Chow is safe. But they shouldn't have spared Chow Chow either. Thinking of Chow Chow, my heart was torn apart. My child, life is too bitter. This time, your mother will not bring you into this world irresponsibly. But those who have wronged you, your mother will send them all to hell one by one. I carefully tucked Meng Han's small portrait close to my body. I know that as long as I take this portrait to the prefect of Shuntian, Shinsu will have no place to bury his body. But this is not enough for me. First, this portrait alone cannot prove Meng Han's guilt. Meng Han can simply claim ignorance and distance herself from the matter. Given Shinsu's deep affection, he might even sacrifice his life to protect Meng Han's innocence. Second, death was too easy for Shinsu. He deserved a better fate. In order to get the most out of this painting, I had to plan carefully. At this time, Meng Han was not yet the empress. The empress's surname was Shao, and she was the mother of the crown prince and the eldest daughter of the Marquis of Dingbei. A year later, the Marquis of Dingbei was convicted of treason, and the entire Shao family was executed. The crown prince was deposed. Empress Shao committed suicide in Fengqing Palace. Soon after, Meng Han gave birth to a prince and was crowned empress. She became the biggest winner in the Dingbei Marquis treason case. The Dingbei Marquis case was Shinsu's first major case. If you say that there was no coincidence, even the devil wouldn't believe you. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. If I want to deal with Shinsu, the Dingbei Marquis mansion is my biggest ally. I took a silver ingot from my jewelry box and asked the doorman to send a message to Xiao Rifan, the son of the Marquis of Dingbei, in Shinsu's name, inviting him to come to the mansion for a chat. I knew that Xiao Rifan would definitely come. It was rumored that this Xiao prince had a fondness for men and had long coveted Shinsu. However, Shinsu despised his character and had always treated him with cold indifference. Today, I would present this Xiao prince with a grand gift. Shinsu, cleansed of all suspicion, would be delivered to his bedchamber. This would be my token of loyalty to Xiao Rifan. I wondered how the empress would react when she heard that her favorite man was being pleasured by another man. Xiao Rifan arrived as promised. He was a little surprised to see me welcoming him. In my 2 lifetimes, this was the first time I had seen the legendary crown prince of Dingbei. His ancestors and father were renowned for their military achievements. But he was a complete wastrel. Originally, the heir was his older brother, and he was the younger son. Later, his older brother died in battle, and he inherited the title of heir. However, he was incapable of leading troops into battle but excelled at cockfighting and dogfighting. Most outrageously, he was homosexual and frequently frequented places of ill repute. In his previous life, he had openly flirted with Shinsu at a banquet in the prince's mansion. He was reported to the imperial censor and punished by the emperor with a reduction in his annual salary. Shinsu hated him with a passion. Later, Shinsu was responsible for trying the Dingbei Marquis for treason and sentenced Xiao Rifan to immediate execution. Rumors even spread that this was divine retribution, a just punishment. However, Xiao Rifan was not what I had imagined. Rumors described him as frivolous and debauched. In reality, though handsome. He stood tall and straight, and even in his frost-colored robe, he exuded a cold and stern aura. Shuangwen asked me why I had summoned him. I opened the study door, and Shinsu lay unconscious on the bed. I said, "I have a gift for you." Shuangwen was startled into a cough. He looked at Shinsu, then at me, and turned to leave. I had to exert all my strength to hold him back. He kicked Shinsu, his eyes flashing with anger. "Stop pretending to be dead. Get up immediately." I never thought that the third-place scholar, who is supposed to be as pure as a cloud, would resort to such a scheme to bring down the Shao family. He kicked for a while, but Shinsu didn't move an inch. I looked at Shuangwen, deep in thought. His demeanor was quite different from the spoiled playboy I had heard about. A thought crossed my mind. Could it be that Shuangwen's past recklessness was all an act? However, this made it easier for me to speak next. I told Shuangwen that I had a business opportunity for him. As the Shao prince, he could not only obtain the beauty but also help the empress overthrow the imperial concubine. Shuangwen's expression changed drastically, telling me to stop talking nonsense. He turned to leave, but I calmly pointed out that the empress and the Shao family were in danger. Internally, the empress dowager is eyeing the empress's position, and externally, the emperor is wary of the Shao family. The Shao family now seems to be on the brink of collapse, but one misstep could lead to their downfall. If that weren't the case, Shao Shitzi wouldn't have to sully himself in this world. Upon hearing this, Shuangwen lunged forward and grabbed my throat. "Do you know that what you just said is enough to get you killed 800 times? I smiled lightly. "Why don't you go to the palace first, Shuangwen, and search the empress's chambers for any items related to the nightmare array? I'll wait here for the prince." Shuangwen pondered for a moment, then suddenly let go of me and hurried away. Just then, Shinsu awoke on the bed. He cursed me to the heavens, demanding to know what I was trying to do. I stroked his face. "Of course I want to use him to secure a life of wealth and honor." Shinsu flew into a rage, struggling desperately, but he was bound tightly and couldn't break free. Unable to escape, Shinsu began to curse me in various ways. To be honest, his skills as a scholar were quite limited. He kept repeating the same insults over and over. I found him annoying, so I fed him another bowl of medicine. The world fell silent. In the evening, Shuangwen indeed returned to find me. He asked me who I was and how I knew about the items under the empress's bed. I stammered. I had a dream. In the dream, the Shao family met a tragic end. Then I recounted all the misfortunes we had suffered in our previous lives. I also said that I had originally disbelieved all of this until I found the small portrait in my beloved husband's room. I presented the portrait of the concubine to Shuangwen. Shuangwen gave me a look that said he thought I was making it all up. But he still sat down and asked me what my plan was. After midnight, a small palanquin followed Shuangwen into the Shao family compound. The person inside the palanquin was naturally my charming husband. Although Shuangwen's preference for men was a lie, he had already promised me that he would find a man who truly loved men, so that Shinsu could enjoy himself properly. Unfortunately, I had other matters to attend to and couldn't go to the Shao family to eavesdrop, which left me with a hint of regret. 2 days after Shinsu went missing, a servant claiming to be from the household of the Minister of Rights came to our house looking for Shinsu. I recognized him immediately. He wasn't a servant from the minister's household, but rather the messenger between Meng Han and Shinsu from my previous life, a lowly eunuch from the imperial workshop. In my previous life, after I exposed Shinsu's scandal, he no longer bothered to hide anything from me at home. It was this eunuch who had delivered messages between Shinsu and Meng Han at that time. I pretended to know nothing and told him that Shinsu had been invited away by Shuangwen. The eunuch grew frantic, his voice trembling. "Shuangwen? Don't you know that the Shao young master has such preferences? How could you let Shuangwen go to the Shao mansion?" I was startled and burst into tears, saying I had no idea. only that the Xiao young master and my husband were having a secret meeting in the study. And then my husband followed him out. I begged the eunuch to find a way to save my husband. The young eunuch hurried away. As he turned, I wiped away the tears I had forced out and smiled. Meng Han, don't let me down. I didn't have to wait long before the young eunuch returned. He said he had consulted his master. And there was only one way to save Shinsu. I had to go to the Xiao mansion and cause a scene. I feigned fear and asked. They say Xiao sure kills without batting an eye. If I go to his mansion and cause a scene, isn't that asking for death? The young eunuch glared at me angrily. Do you even want to save Minister Shen? To save Minister Shen, the only option now is to make a big fuss about this, so that the entire world knows. Only then can my young master intervene. Besides, you are Shen Shushu's wife. If he is disgraced, it is as if you are disgraced. You should die for him. Isn't that what you should do? What a clever way to say that I should die for him. Meng Han has never disappointed me. She wants me to cause a scene at the Xiao mansion, probably with the intention of having me killed. It would be best if Xiao Rufin were to kill me with a sword at the gate of the Xiao mansion. This way, she could eliminate me, Shinsu's confidant, and use my death to add to Xiao Rufin's crimes. It was indeed a clever plan to kill two birds with one stone. Unfortunately, Meng Han invited me into the trap, but she didn't realize that she was the one truly trapped. Ever since Xiao Rufin abducted Shinsu, we had already made our plans. That night, he took the small portrait of Meng Han to see the emperor. He told the emperor that he had kidnapped Shinsu entirely for the emperor's sake. Shinsu had committed such a heinous act and deserved to die, but the emperor could not punish him openly. Therefore, he devised the scheme to leave Shinsu with no way to live or die. After all, his reputation was already ruined, so a little more wouldn't matter. But the emperor's reputation couldn't be tarnished by a lowly villain like Shinsu. Xiao Rufin also told the emperor that the only thing he couldn't be certain of was what role Meng Han had played in the scandal. If the emperor didn't want to investigate Meng Han, then he would return to his mansion and kill Shinsu immediately, claiming that Shinsu had been unable to bear the humiliation and had died after crashing into a pillar. If the emperor wanted to investigate Meng Han, he also had a plan to test whether Meng Han was involved with Shinsu. Xiao Rufin's confession was filled with words that seemed to be for the emperor's benefit, leaving no room for the emperor not to be moved. Moreover, he appeared to give the emperor two choices. But ask yourself, where in the world would a man, knowing that his wife might be unfaithful, not seek the truth? Especially when that man is an emperor. The emperor would certainly investigate Meng Han. When Meng Han was planning to send me to my death, she didn't know that every one of her actions was already under the emperor's surveillance. Looking at the young eunuch, I nodded slowly, appearing convinced by his words. You're right. Dying for my husband is worth it. The young eunuch left satisfied. I straightened my clothes and hurried to the Xiao mansion. Upon arriving at Xiao Rufin's residence, I was indeed blocked at the gate. I pretended to cry and beg, but in my heart, I was confident and knew exactly what to do next. The Xiao family's mansion was located in a prominent area of the city, a special gift from the late emperor to General Xiao after the Northern Campaign. General Xiao had always been close to the common people, so the area outside the Xiao mansion was always bustling with people and vehicles. I stumbled around the entrance of the Xiao mansion, then suddenly threw myself onto the stone steps in front of the gate, crying out with all my strength. The heir of the Xiao family is acting recklessly, forcibly taking a commoner's husband and forcing him into prostitution. My shout indeed attracted the attention of many villagers. I wiped away the tears that had forced their way out with a handkerchief. My husband, Shinsu, is the imperial scholar selected by the current emperor, a scholar of the Hanlin Academy. Yet the heir of the Xiao family has arrested him on false charges and imprisoned him. Under this clear sky, my unfortunate husband has been imprisoned for 3 days and 3 nights. I hear that the heir of the Xiao family is ruthless and merciless. By now, my Shenlang must have been. Shenlang? I understand. Even if you manage to escape the Shao family alive, you will have no face left to live. I will accompany you. I refuse to live on. After delivering this dramatic monologue with perfect intonation, I charged toward the massive stone lion at the entrance of the Shao family mansion. Taking advantage of the chaos, I smashed the blood-soaked sack I had prepared earlier, causing blood to gush from my forehead. I then collapsed at the entrance of the Shao family mansion. This dramatic performance left the onlookers filled with righteous indignation. Even with my eyes closed, I could still hear the crowd cursing Shao Rufin in various accents. Soon, I was taken away by people sent by Shao Rufin. After being taken to the clinic by the Shao family, Shao Rufin was already waiting for me. He looked at my face and hair covered in dog's blood and laughed at me for going all out. As I wiped myself clean, I reminded him that if we were going to put on a show, we had to do it properly. And now it was up to Shao Gongzi. As we had planned, the commotion I caused made the incident known to everyone, and it indeed caught the attention of the imperial censor. The next day, Shao Rufin was collectively impeached by the imperial censors. And for a time, all the officials in the court were too busy to attend to other matters. The emperor was furious and immediately decided to personally preside over the trial. Shao Rufin and Shinsu were brought into the palace to face the emperor, while I, as an important witness, was also taken into the Golden Hall. After planning for so long, the show was finally about to begin. When I arrived, the interrogation had just begun. After several days of torture, Shinsu was emaciated and barely recognizable. Unfortunately, Meng Han wasn't there. I really wanted her to see Shinsu's current state. Upon seeing me, he was furious, cursing me as a poisonous woman. His eyes filled with hatred as if he wanted to devour me alive. I threw myself into his arms, sobbing, "Husband, what has happened to you?" I even adopted a defiant stance, ready to fight Shao Rufin to the death. Anyone who saw this would have praised me as a virtuous and kind-hearted woman. Finally, I was held back by eunuchs and forced to kneel before the emperor, begging him to intervene on Shinsu's behalf. Shao Rufin shouted that he was innocent, pleading with the imperial censor to step down, as this case was merely a matter of the imperial family. The censor refused to step back, insisting that there are no minor matters in the imperial family. Shao Rufin looked at the emperor with a troubled expression and firmly stated that if the censor did not step back, he could not reveal the details of the case. He glanced at Shinsu with a meaningful look, suggesting that perhaps Shingongzi should decide whether the censor should remain present. Shinsu knelt and pleaded with the censor to step aside. The censor, whether out of the belief that there are no trivial matters in the imperial family or simply because he enjoyed the spectacle, refused to budge. As the three of them argued back and forth, the emperor's expression grew increasingly dark. Finally, he could no longer contain himself and waved his hand, ordering the censor to withdraw first. The imperial censor had no choice but to leave. With his departure, the hall was left empty except for the emperor, his personal eunuch, Shinsu, Shao Rufin, Empress Shao, and me. Perhaps because the matter involved the imperial harem, Empress Shao was also present. Shao Rufin played his part to the hilt, immediately prostrating himself at the emperor's feet. He cast a sly glance at Shinsu, implying that while he had indeed been driven by personal desire to seize Shinsu, he had also been tempted by Shinsu's body. However, if Shinsu had not committed such a heinous act, even if he were given 800 dares, he would never dare to insult a court official. Shinsu refused to accept this, cursing Shao Rufin as a beast and begging the emperor to take his side. Shao Rufin sneered, pulled out a small portrait from his robe, and threw it at Shinsu's feet. "Humph. Then please explain to us, Mr. Shen, who the person in this painting is." Shinsu glanced at it, his eyes freezing as if he had seen his own death. The emperor and empress, having likely seen the portrait before, remained calm. However, the emperor still displayed the appropriate anger. Picking up the jade scepter nearby and hurling it at Shinsu, he demanded an explanation. The jade scepter struck Shinsu's head, then bounced off and shattered into pieces on the ground. The sound of shattering jade left everyone present speechless with fear. Shinsu was bleeding profusely, but he quickly regained his composure and knelt before the emperor, declaring that he had never seen the painting and that all of this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Xiao and me. In front of everyone, he began to recount how, on the second day of our wedding, I had drugged him and knocked him unconscious, then sent him to Xiao mansion. He was emotionally charged, his eyes bloodshot, as if possessed by a demon. He shouted that he was innocent, begging the emperor to avenge him and execute me, the poisonous woman. He didn't notice that everyone in the hall was now looking at him as if he were a madman. I pretended to be heartbroken and looked at him, asking, "Husband, have you lost your mind? I've been planning everything for you. How could you do this to me? Even if you're trying to clear your name, you can't slander me like this." I also prostrated myself on the ground, facing the emperor and crying with tears and snot streaming down my face, "Your Majesty, Shinsu and I have been childhood sweethearts. Everyone in the neighborhood knows that I have loved him since I was a child. Whatever good things there were in our family, I always gave them to him first, to ensure he could study in peace. I never let him lift a finger at home. Marrying him was the blessing I had longed for day and night. How could I possibly bind him and throw him into another man's bed on our wedding night? And it's a man, no less? My husband is the most upright man. It must be Prince Xiao who drove him mad, causing him to speak such nonsense here. Your Majesty, please avenge this humble woman." I feigned bitterness toward Xiao. Xiao sneered. "Are you a fool? Your own husband is trying to kill you, and you still have the nerve to speak ill of me?" I wept and sobbed, looking utterly distraught. Empress Xiao spoke gently to me, urging me to tell her everything I knew. She promised that she and the emperor would ensure justice was served. I looked at Empress Xiao and blurted out like a fool, "I've already said everything. What else is there to say?" I knew that the more foolish I appeared at this moment, the more trust the emperor would place in me. Empress Xiao was pleased with my improvisation, and a smile spread to the corners of her eyes. "Just tell me how Rufeng came to your home and how you took Xin Bianchuan away from your home. Speak the truth, and that will suffice." I paused for a moment before speaking slowly. "Your humble servant is foolish. I have only been married to the Xin family for 3 or 4 days. Let me start from the night of our wedding. My husband did not consummate the marriage with me but instead retired to the study alone. The next morning, I prepared breakfast and went to the study to call my husband to eat. But I found him staring at a small portrait on the table. And he was. I feigned embarrassment, looking as though I couldn't bring myself to speak. Though I didn't say it outright, everyone in the hall understood what I meant. Everyone looked at Shinsu with disdain. Shinsu was so angry his face turned red, his chest heaving. "You wicked woman. You're clearly slandering me." I crawled forward a few more times, insisting that every word I said was the truth. And if there was even a single lie, let the thunder god strike me dead. After all, Shinsu had done such things in front of me in his previous life. And who knows how many times he had done them in private. Even if the gods heard my words, they would surely judge me innocent of deceiving the emperor. Shinsu, unable to control his rage, spewed forth a torrent of slanderous words against me. I wept uncontrollably, unable to speak further. A eunuch promptly sealed Shinsu's mouth. Shinsu was like a lamb led to slaughter, able only to utter muffled sounds. The emperor gestured for me to continue. I stammered. "I do not know who the person in the painting is. But on the day of my wedding, Such a thing happened. And my heart is truly broken. Coincidentally, on that day, my husband sent an invitation to Xiao, inviting him to the mansion. I thought Xiao was my husband's friend, so I secretly gave him the small portrait to look at. My intention was to ask Xiao to persuade my husband. I even thought that if my husband truly liked her, I would be the one to decide, and she could be taken into the mansion to be my sister-in-law. Unexpectedly, Xiao's expression changed drastically upon seeing the portrait. He hurriedly put it away and went to find my husband. As a result, my husband was taken to Prince Xiao's mansion and hasn't returned for several days. Coincidentally, the young servant of the Minister of Rights, who is on good terms with my husband, came to the mansion looking for him. I told the young servant about this matter, but he told me that Prince Xiao has a preference for men and told me to make a big scene at the Xiao family's mansion to demand his release. And Prince Xiao wouldn't dare to refuse. What happened afterward? Everyone already knows. As I finished speaking, the room fell silent, except for the intense moans of Shinsu. I felt like a woman whose only concern was her husband's safety, banging my head against the emperor's throne. The burning pain on my forehead told me it must be swollen. But deep down, I felt a surge of satisfaction, for I knew that every prostration I made was the death knell for Shinsu. As I knelt and wept, I pleaded, "Your Majesty, I do not know who the woman in that painting is, but my husband loves a woman. Is that a crime worthy of death? Prince Xiao has insulted my husband so grievously. I beg you to avenge this commoner's husband." My words were heartfelt and reasonable. In comparison, Shinsu's defense seemed feeble and powerless. The emperor's gaze toward Shinsu was as cold as if he were looking at a dead man. Just then, Meng Han was brought forward. After 2 lifetimes, I saw Meng Han again. I hated her with every fiber of my being, but I could only clench my fists tightly, using the pain to remind myself to stay calm. Whether in my previous life or this one, Meng Han had always been deeply favored by the emperor. To bring her down, I could not afford to make a single mistake. She knelt down to pay her respects to the emperor. The emperor stared at her, not allowing her to rise. It was Empress Xiao who spoke softly to her. "Rise. There is nothing else. We found a portrait of the empress in Shenbianchuan's residence, so we asked the empress to come and identify it. This portrait is so exquisite, could it be the empress's private collection?" Meng Han glanced at the small portrait on the ground and immediately knelt at the emperor's feet, saying, "Your Majesty, your servant." I didn't give her a chance to speak. Even before she raised her head, I pretended to see her for the first time, wide-eyed with terror, pointing at her and too frightened to speak. Without regard for the emperor and empress present, I knelt and crawled to Shinsu, slapping him repeatedly across the face. You fool! How dare you covet the empress? You coveted the empress, yet you married me? You worthless scoundrel! This is treason. You can die alone, but you dare to drag me down with you? I'll fight you to the death. I beat Shinsu furiously, and Meng Han's pleas were drowned out by my hysterical screams. Shinsu had already realized the situation was hopeless when Meng Han entered. He clenched his teeth and endured my abuse without uttering a word. By the time the eunuch pulled me away, Meng Han had missed her chance to defend herself. She knelt at the emperor's feet, her face slightly raised, tears streaming down her cheeks, looking pitiful and helpless. Unfortunately, the emperor was completely captivated by me and didn't even glance at her. I rushed forward again and knelt before the emperor. "Your Majesty, this beast has only been my husband for 3 days. The things he has done have nothing to do with me. If you intend to execute his entire clan, please allow me to divorce him first." I cried so hard that snot and tears mixed together, looking like a clown. However, this lightened the heavy atmosphere in the hall. Meng Han's tears had been shed in vain. Xiao Rufan laughed at the right moment. Your Majesty. Just grant her request. She looks so pitiful. The Emperor impatiently waved his hand. Get up. Stop crying. Your crying is giving me a headache. This meant he had granted me mercy. I was overjoyed and hurriedly knelt down to thank him. At this moment, the Emperor turned to Meng Han. Explain yourself. What is the meaning of this painting? As the saying goes, the first attempt is vigorous, the second is weaker, and the third is exhausted. After my earlier interruption, Meng Han's pitiful expression was no longer as perfect as before. She could only dryly respond. The person in the painting does indeed resemble me in 7 out of 10 aspects. But this painting was neither painted by me nor given by me. What does the Emperor want me to explain? As expected, she was preparing to sacrifice Shinsu. I looked at Shinsu kneeling in the hall, wondering if he was feeling betrayed by his beloved and his heart was being torn apart, or if he was finding solace in the fact that he could sacrifice himself for his beloved. Either way, it made me happy. Meng Han was still using her tears to manipulate the Emperor, crying more pitifully by the second. Your Majesty. I don't know what others have said or done, but to convict me based on a small portrait is truly unfair. If the Emperor says that Minister Shin has confessed to having an affair with me, then please release him and give him the chance to confront me. The hall was silent, and all that could be heard was Meng Han's pitiful voice. Since I married your Majesty at the age of 15, I have never had a single day where I did not pour my heart into you. Never a day where I did not miss you, and never a day where I did not long for you to be by my side. Though I may have been a bit spoiled in the past. If your Majesty does not believe in my undying devotion, I beg you, grant me death to prove my innocence. As she spoke, Meng Han raised her head and looked at the Emperor with a look of grievance, tears the size of pearls welling up in her eyes. This tearful expression would have surely captured the Emperor's heart in the past. But now, the Emperor only stared at Meng Han without saying a word. With no one responding, Meng Han had no choice but to get up from the ground and pretend to charge toward the stone pillar in the hall. As Meng Han was about to collide with the pillar, the Emperor finally ordered the eunuch by his side. Quickly stop the Empress. Meng Han sighed in relief and knelt down. Thank you, Your Majesty, for believing me. The Emperor coldly looked at her and said, I will give you another chance to tell the truth. Or do you choose to confront Shinsu? Meng Han finally dared to look at Shinsu, probably certain in her heart that Shinsu would sacrifice himself for her, and without hesitation chose to confront Shinsu. The cloth covering Shinsu's mouth was finally removed. Shinsu did not disappoint Meng Han. He first looked at her steadily for a moment, then knelt on the ground and banged his head repeatedly. The Emperor is wise. This guilty minister, Shinsu, was blinded by desire and dared to harbor improper thoughts toward the noble concubine. I deserve to die 1,000 times. However, Empress Meng was unaware of this traitor's vile intentions. To avoid involving others, this traitor is willing to die to atone for his sins. Ah, Shinsu, don't love her too much. Hearing Shinsu take the blame alone, Meng Han sighed in relief. She crawled to the Emperor's feet. Your Majesty, you heard it yourself. Your humble servant is innocent. This must be a plot by someone to frame Shinxiu and frame him for a crime. Please avenge your humble servant. The Emperor kicked her away with a single kick. You worthless woman. You still dare to speak so smoothly at this point? Do you think I'm a fool? The kick was hard, and Meng Han coughed up a mouthful of blood, about to cry out in protest. But when she caught sight of the bloodied figure being dragged in by the guards, all the words died on her lips. That bloodied figure was the young eunuch who had delivered the message for her that day. The young eunuch had had both feet severed and was barely clinging to life, his body covered in wounds. Upon seeing the Emperor, he muttered only one sentence, Your Majesty, spare my life. I was merely caught red-handed by the Empress Dowager and Shindarin. She threatened my family's lives to force me to deliver messages for her and Shindarin. I had no choice but to obey. I begged for a swift death. The emperor waved his hand, and the eunuch was dragged away. Only then did Menghan truly feel fear in her eyes. Her face ashen. She desperately threw herself at the emperor. This must be the empress's slander against me. Because you cherish me. The empress has always sought to eliminate me. Please do not be deceived by her outwardly virtuous appearance. The emperor's eyes filled with disappointment. He kicked her again, sending her flying. You worthless woman. With irrefutable evidence. You still dare to lie and slander the empress? Your crime is even greater. Bring her to me. I will make her suffer 1,000 times worse. Seeing that all was lost, Menghan clung to her last hope and screamed, Your Majesty. It was Shinsu who forced me. He stole my personal handkerchief and threatened me, saying that if I didn't submit to him, he would ruin my reputation. I had no choice. Your Majesty. You said you loved me most. I will serve you every day. Please spare my life. Menghan was indeed capable of great deeds. Able to bend and stretch as needed, surprising everyone present. Shinsu, however, looked as though he didn't recognize Menghan. His face ashen. Your Majesty. How can you say such things? It was you who seduced the minister. You even said that the emperor is old and greasy, and that he makes you feel sick every time. You would have been willing to die for him if you could have been with him. You are the empress I would die to protect. How could you treat me this way? This dogfight was so thrilling, I never saw it coming. Shinsu was silenced, dragged away, and they feared he might say something even more outrageous. Menghan kept cursing him, calling him an idiot and saying she was blind for ever falling for him. The emperor was so enraged he fainted, shouting before losing consciousness, I will have this pair of dogs executed by 1,000 cuts. The rest of the story. I heard from Xiao Rufin. Menghan was executed by slow slicing, and the emperor fulfilled his promise to have her killed by 1,000 cuts. However, the official account from the palace was that Meng Guifei had suddenly fallen ill and died. Shinsu, of course, was also dead. In official accounts, he died by throwing himself against a pillar, unable to bear the humiliation inflicted by Xiao Rufin, and his death was deemed dignified. However, the reality was that he was given to Xiao Rufin by the emperor and was tortured daily by several burly men. Only in this way could the emperor's hatred be appeased. Xiao Rufin, for forcing the death of the Hanlin Academy compiler, was publicly flogged 100 times by the emperor. Of course, this beating was merely for show. From the outside, it looked like his flesh was torn to shreds. A gruesome sight meant to intimidate. But in reality, when I went to visit Shinsu at Zhao's mansion 7 days later, Xiao Rufin was already walking freely. Yes, I went to visit Shinsu. At the time, his hands and feet were chained to an iron cage, which would be his home for the rest of his life. Upon seeing me, he first cursed me, then asked why. I told him I had a dream. I recounted every detail of the events from my previous life. One by one, I smiled bitterly, hugging my daughter close. Your father will never come home. But now, he could only stay in this cage, waiting day after day to be favored. This was the ending I had carefully chosen for him. As for me, thanks to the emperor and empress's mercy, after arranging Shinsu's funeral, I was sent to the grasslands on the frontier. The place was my choice. In my previous life, my daughter Chao Chao had said that the place she most wanted to go was the frontier. She had read a line of poetry, the vast desert, a lone column of smoke, the long river, a round setting sun. But she had spent her days at home learning to play the zither and paint, never venturing far from home. I had promised her that once she turned 7, I would ask her father for permission to take her on a journey to see the outside world. But my Chow Chow never lived to see her 7th birthday. Ciao ciao. In this life, your mother will go to the frontier for you, watching the sunset every day and admiring the desert every night. If you can forgive your mother, please be my daughter again in your next life.